Hey everybody, it's Tinderbox Meetup with Michael Becker. I'm Mark Bernstein, the designer of Tinderbox, and it's Sunday, December 14th. Next week we have a guest, I believe, and Michael will remind us about that because that I think is going to be really interesting.
It will be, and
And
I'm not going to be here, by the way. So
ah,
I've got a conflict. So if you can facilitate that one, that would be great. I'll have.
okay. Send
But
send send me the details.
the guest is Jacob, and he's going to be talking about his markdown workflows and workload processes
Right.
and how
And
that works.
and which includes interesting text tricks to make Tinderbox look better.
Yes, and he's got a whole use of map view too, which is interesting and for mapping things out. So that'll be good.
So here's Michael Becker.
All right, hi everybody. Welcome. Typically the meetup format is we go around the room and new people introduce themselves. We don't have anybody new today. We then either jump into a theme like next week. Jacob will be talking to us about workloads and markdown workloads and workflows, which unfortunately I'm going to miss. And or we just have a general conversation. And today, the general conversation I'd like to kick off if we can, based on a conversation I was having with Andreas on Friday was just about that concept of workflows and workloads and like how do we what are the best practices of workflows and what or not even best practices, like what are our individual workflows to make our personal knowledge management processes work. And we've talked about this before, but I loved it if over the next, say, month, 2 months, we can dig deeper into this idea of not just the workload of like a particular project in Tinderbox that we're working on, but the overall workflow of the different tools we use and the different ideas that we bring together to make our knowledge work. And Andreas, if you're open to chiming in, or if you're in an environment to chime in to help set the stage for this discussion, I'd love it. The one of the things that Andreas had kind of helped me understand on Friday was this idea too that when we're thinking about our knowledge and our workflow, what we want often is a source of truth. We want our brains want to know like where is that, where do we keep that particular piece of knowledge so it's safe and secure that we can then work on it. Where can we then bring that knowledge into other places and create derivative insight off of it, but then always fall back to that source of truth as possible. And what tools within our workflow toolbox do we store different places of source of knowledge? So, for instance, our citation work is in our reference manager of choice. Our DEVONthink is increasingly for many becoming a repository for documents. Tinderbox is the place to do some thinking. Other tools are used for writing. I do all of my work in Tinderbox, including my writing, but a lot of people like Bruce and others will do, successfully leverage things like Scrivener or Word or Excel, to help complete their final output. So I was hoping we can kind of have that generalized discussion of what our individual workflows look like and when we're looking to approach projects and where do we keep our various sources of truth, or what does that even mean to us? So maybe we can kick it off there, and if somebody wants to pick it up and help drive that discussion, I'd appreciate it. And if we if and much like my class, if no one volunteers, I'm going to call on somebody. Peter, let's start with you. Like, where do you keep your knowledge sources of truth, and what do your workflows look like?
Okay, basically, I use DEVONthink as my everything box. I'll use Zotero for quick web capture, but then I'll move everything into bookends. Um, I use Texifier for automating running all of the typesetting utilities on my machine. Even though I could do it from the command line, it's a lot easier to let that program figure out what sequence to run, BibTeX, LaTeX, and how many times it needs to be run. So it handles that thinking for me. So that makes that app worth purchasing, even though the underlying typesetting system itself is free. And of course, I use Hookmark to link things together, especially if I'm programming and I find something on the web telling me how to do something. I'll do a Hookmark link in to the source code file that's using that technique so I can get back to where it was that I found out how to do that. Also, I have
Sorry.
Ollama
Sorry.
running.
On that, let's pause there. So on that note, you're hook marking individual web pages.
Yeah, I'm hook marking individual web pages or pieces of documentation that are related to something that I'm doing in a source code document so that I can get back and figure out how it is that I figured out that technique to properly do a little hat tip to whoever solved the problem for me elsewhere.
Okay.
And then I have Ollama running in the background, and I have iTerm 2 for a Quake style terminal that will drop down so that I can ask the AI a quick reference question.
So Ollama running in the background. Are you doing that locally on your machine, or is
Yes,
that
I'm doing that locally.
okay? And then what was the last thing you said you're using?
iTerm 2 is my terminal, and that can be configured to give you a drop-down Quake style terminal, just sort of like slides down from the top of your screen so that you're typing on the terminal and then it slides back up out of place when you don't need it anymore. Oh, and then hat tip to Mark Anderson. I use Text Sniper quite frequently, and that's a real godsend.
Text Sniper.
Um,
Fantastic. Okay. So there's a mixture of things that I've just heard, and this kind of goes into the context of when Chuck was talking last week about like there's four types of books. When we think about these different types of workflows, I think there's what I'm hearing, and again, please all of you chime in to refute any of this. I'm hearing we've got a list of tools, and those tools are performing some form of job. Those tools sit within a workflow process. And then there are some, and maybe there's some idea of utility. Some of these tools are providing, service. Some of these tools are providing utility. I think it would be really helpful to tease some of this apart as we have this dialogue. And then I want to show something when the time is right that Andreas showed me on Friday that I found it particularly interesting because he's like, look what I can do. And then I couldn't get with Tinderbox. And I'm like, I couldn't get my Tinderbox to do it until I realized that I had to set a setting in the Mac OS settings. And then once I did that, it worked. So there's this combination too of, leveraging like the platform you're looking on, like Mac OS, and needing to have some settings to make other types of kind of workflow behavioral tricks to work. So how can somebody help me categorize that list of thinking a little bit better? So like tools, utilities, methods, work, processes. Chuck, you're starting to smile a little bit. What's coming into your mind?
The evil
Just that
Mr.
we live in a
Wade.
world of we just live in a world of a lot of complexity.
Well,
we have lots of settings, and I think that's one issue we're just raising. It's settings, and the fact that settings can collide, or settings are necessary to enable something else you want to do. And settings can be sometimes easy to find or automatically presented to you. Apple tries to do that. Other times you can go hunting all over the place. You know it's somewhere, but good luck.
Right.
So,
and Peter, I don't want to interrupt you. So you want to finish kind of your list, and then, or how are you getting like your Ollama working? Talk to me about that. Like, how is that? That's interesting.
okay, there's the Ollama website. Let me see if I can find that. Um, basically, it shows up. It looks like an application, and it puts up a menu bar menu item. Okay, it's Ollama.com. I'll drop that in the chat too. And when it's running, it sets up a background server also that other applications can talk to. And you can access it from the command line by typing Ollama run and the name of the model that you want. The website itself will give you the code from the code that you want to type in to have the command line tool fetch a given. Let's see, did that come out right? Okay, is that link working? Otherwise, let me try it again. Ah, okay, there you are. Ollama.com. And now it has a models menu on the website, and the models menu has a listing of all of the different models that you can run locally. So you can query that if you want something that is uncensored, or if you're looking at coding, if you want a model that does computer vision. They have a few different little tags. They have a little tag system to help you find the model that you want. And then when you select one of the models, you get a page that lists all the different variations of the model. And if you click one of the variations, you get the code to copy and paste. So there's like a little Ollama run Qwen3 v1, and you have the little icon there to copy it onto your clipboard. Then you go into the command line, you paste that in the clipboard. That's the command that will have it download the model and execute the model. And then you're just like running in your terminal, talking to the model directly.
And
So
then and it's spitting back an answer to you somehow in the command line.
yeah, then it'll just come back and you'll be an interactive dialogue on the command line as if you were chatting with someone in a text chat window. So that works very nicely. Um, you can use it, and in the kinds of queries that I'll use it to, sometimes I'll ask it to generate sampled data. Like give me a JSON list of 20 names, and it'll give you 20 names. And then if you could ask it to give me a JSON list of 20 names divided into first name, middle name or initial, last name, and then it'll generate sample data that way. And I use that in programming projects if I want to just scaffold out some test data to play with. Other times I will ask it to help jog my memory. What was the movie with the three seashells in it? And it'd be able to pull up Demolition Man in seconds. So it's good for those kinds of queries. Um, if you get into anything public policy related, then a strong political bias will start leaking in. Um, don't do anything to like try to lock up criminals, or most of the AI models start freaking out and screaming about the human rights of the criminals and how you have to treat them all with dignity and increase spending on social programs because, of course, society is responsible for all crime because we don't give away enough free stuff to bad guys. But aside from that annoying political context that you get in some of the models, they're generally useful if you stick to academic topics. What professors are working on a topic, and it'll generally be able to give you some useful answers there. Um, you can ask it about technical topics. However, if you're asking it about a technology, if it's something that a lot of people are using now, it'll be really good. So the models are great at asking questions about CSS, for example. But if you try to get into the nitty gritty of the 93.1 version of tumblers from Ted Nelson's work, it'll come up with complete rubbish because there aren't enough instances in its training set talking about obscure technical topics. So when you start getting off the beaten path, the quality of your search results degrades very, very rapidly. And I even have a piece in the new Future of Text anthology that Frode Hagelin's going to be coming out with in a week or so, talking about just that issue.
Okay, so and there's some comments. Let's just jump to the chat a bit. One comment from I thought was interesting from David is, and I'm going to interpret a little bit. It feels like it's just like a bunch of tools in the kitchen drawer, junk in the kitchen drawer, which I agree. I mean, at some level, if we don't figure out how the explain to people how all these different tools in the kitchen drawer work, it is just a bunch of junk in the drawer. So it will be interesting to tease that apart, part two, in terms of workflow visualization of this tool connects to this tool, this connects to that tool, and that's the process.
Also, I should call out Devon Agent Pro, which I use in conjunction with DEVONthink. And Devon Agent Pro is a multi-search engine search result aggregator that can dump selected results directly into DEVONthink. And that's really handy because it saves me making a half dozen different queries to different search engines. If, your initial Google search turns up dicey results and you need to go deeper, and it has different search profiles. So you can have it do a light search of the web. You can have it follow links at greater levels of link traversal. Takes longer as you tell it to go deeper, but it can go and really interrogate sites and dig up results that wouldn't come up on an initial first pass. So that's a really useful tool, and those two work together perfectly because, of course, it's all the Devon ecosystem there internally.
Okay.
And I love tools that have deep linking. That's something I really look for. If I can drag a link, and a Devon link can go into Tinderbox, and Tinderbox can pop open the Devon link tool, and vice versa. So that's really indispensable. So
Okay.
always look for deep linking in tools.
Got it. So let's have you define that. Let's come back to that in a minute. I'll have you define that in a second. But one question that Bruce had before we move on, it was about the using of hookmark. Bruce, you want to articulate that before, if I can't find it? What was your hookmark question?
Tangential. I've had a need recently to how you can grab a web page and highlight it, and then when you click on the link, it'll show that highlighted section. So I haven't been able to figure out how to do that within a PDF on a web page, a readable PDF. But I was wondering if Hookmark is capable of doing that. Takes us a little bit sideways, but not entirely.
Yeah, I haven't tried it myself, but I'm pretty sure that's part of the Hookmark feature set. So it
All
should
right,
work.
then I'll just delve
guarantee
into it on my own.
Yeah, I can't guarantee it, but there's a very high probability, 85 to 90% range, that it'll just work and do the right thing for you.
By the way, if a Hookmark's available on SetApp, so if you use SetApp, you can get access to Hookmark.
That's where I picked it up.
Cost-effective way to use it. And I would add that to my list of tools if we were to sit and listen to tools. SetApp is just a fantastic app utility. Awesome. So the other question I had, Peter,
Can I just make a quick comment, Michael?
Sure, please.
So, hearing what Peter, and, it had to be Peter, right? Someone at the top of the mountain who is, practically reaching the stars. That's who you picked first.
Yeah, he even lost me a few times. I'll have to admit it.
Peter, I am always so in awe of the different things that you were able to do, and you're sharing your knowledge. But I swear, it's like listening to Copernicus. And so my thought is there some way of taking this kind of information? It would be a little bit of work, but I don't think so much. And what kinds of projects might you be working on? What would then be like a table of what some of the tools are, so it becomes a bit of a resource guide for others? And I think if we were to publish that in the forum or have a dedicated spot for that, that could lead to some interesting possibilities.
And that's kind of where I wanted to go, Bruce, is like, how do we take this to the next level? This like project workflow methods, and just show.
Because otherwise we're just talking about it. It's passing along in time. And my fear is that we're not making use of what's potentially some very valuable information.
Agreed.
Thoughts?
David, and then let's let Peter retort to both of you.
Splitting the half between Bruce at the bottom and Peter at the top. Repeatedly, I am chasing undergraduate business school students who, they think they're going to make some of these guys are going to graduate. These kids, I haven't found the women yet, but the men certainly think they're going to come out of undergraduate school with a certificate on the Bloomberg terminal. Anybody here know what a Bloomberg terminal costs?
A lot.
Somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 annually per seat.
Yeah.
So, how to package note taking in Zettelkasten for these undergraduates is so Bruce is pointing out between the chasm between Peter's embrace of anything that's remotely feasible, Peter's going to grab it. And we also have to drag along Bruce, who's actually got a full-time job helping people. I'm not entirely sure what Peter does, but it's not really relevant. We're here as a team. We're here as a convoy. That's my 2 cents.
And this is where I think we're getting to some really interesting concepts the last few weeks. Before what Dave Rogers kicked off a few weeks back on this idea of best practices, and what Andres has been trying to get me to understand the last 6 weeks or so, or 6 months or so, or a year, honestly, is this need to understanding workflow. And there's that, and then there's that middle part in the middle, where it's not just about work, here's my tool, here's the steps that I use my tool within that particular project. Here are some best practices, aka ways that I found to do this thing more efficiently or more effectively than otherwise known. And then there's that thing that Andreas showed me on Friday, which I want to show you, is like you make this setting and this thing works and this is cool because of this reason for me. And I think if we can kind of, to Bruce's point, start finding a way to better document all of that, like tool, maybe project and objective, tool, workflow, and setup, I think would be really effective.
There also within that hopefully would be some links to some valuable how-tos.
Yeah. Then you've got the resources that, and then that points back to Chuck, going back to what Chuck brought up, you've got the 4 kinds of books, everything from here's the tutorial and the how-to ultimately the strategic why, and I feel like something's coalescing over the last few weeks as we go through these discussions.
Yeah, and call out to Roger. Thank you, Roger, for putting up some examples of what my 4th category of books was. That's a useful list, and I will check out a couple of those books myself.
Quite welcome.
So, Peter, you want to chime in and respond to any of this, or do we want to? Where are we at?
Let's see. Looking at Tinderbox, a lot of times I'll use Tinderbox as a dedicated editor for different file types. So I spend an awful lot of my Tinderbox time working at sort of skinning Tinderbox and using it as a generic user interface. I forgot the name of the program, but back when AppleScript was a lot more popular, there was one company that came out with like a skeleton application that you could talk to by AppleScript and use it as a user interface for your scripts. And I can't remember what the name of that tool was. That was like back in the System 7 era. But I use Tinderbox the same way. I sort of treat Tinderbox as my dream generic application user interface, and then I'll spend a lot of time tweaking it so that then I'm working at the Tinderbox outline level, but generating really complicated secondary file formats. And I do all of the thinking about how to convert my high-level ideas into that particular file format ahead of time, build that into Tinderbox prototypes, action code, and then once that phase is done, I don't have to think about it anymore. And then Tinderbox is now my custom editor for file format X.
Yeah. And so, and your objective there with all of that is starting from Bruce's comment on project. So for that particular effort, you're looking to, when you say file format, for the layman, what does that mean?
Okay, say I have a really complicated typesetting project. I'm not going to be working in LaTeX.
And I'm sorry, what is a typesetting project? Like, let's really simplify the language.
Okay, typesetting is using a domain-specific language for describing the layout of text on a page. And the typesetting engine handles line breaks. It will adjust intercharacter spacing. They have the ability to slightly smoosh all of the characters in order to produce optically smooth margins, which I'm really into. And they have a typesetting library called microtypography, and the microtypography library will cause punctuation points at the end of a line to be pulled slightly into the margin area so that the letters will all be lined up, even though the comma or the period will be nudged a little less than a full character space off from the edge, so that to your eye, when you're looking at the page, it looks absolutely dead on smooth. It reduces rivers and gaps in the text, so you use fewer lines using an advanced typesetting library than a regular CSS line break algorithm will give you. So I use the typesetting libraries. They also provide support for academic notation. So if you want to have parallel text next to each other, or you want to generate linguistics diagrams, there'll be a LaTeX library package that can handle that for you. So then you don't want to have to be looking at the documentation for all these different domain-specific languages when you're working on your typesetting project. Otherwise, you'd go out of your gourd switching between a text editor and the documentation to figure out, how do I call this to do what I want? So
Well,
instead,
let me pause you right there, Peter.
Yeah.
Let's take a breath. I think there's a really important point right there. And I believe this is what Andreas has been trying to convey over the last few weeks. It's that point is like, once you can set up the automation, once you can set up the environment, that creates a lot more efficiency and effectiveness for you. You're not losing energy or effort or cognitive load having to switch between different tools and different systems. Once you've got your workflow up and running, once you've got your tool environment set up properly, you can get stuff done without having to think about it.
exactly.
And it sounds
Exactly.
like that's what you've achieved with your particular set of projects.
Right. So then I'll have a Tinderbox prototype for each kind of thing that I really care about for any given project. I might even construct some custom icons so just visually they jump out at me and I can immediately see what kind of a thing it is in the outline as I'm dragging the outline items around. And then the templating system in Tinderbox with the action code underneath it will generate the correct notation that I need for the typesetting engine. So I'm not formatting input for a programming language. I'll let Tinderbox do that for me. And then again, I'm just thinking at the high level, okay, I want to have, a floating illustration, and there'll be an attribute on the floating illustration for how I want to have that thing labeled. And then I will just fill in my little Tinderbox attribute. Here's what I want for the label of the illustration. I will use the Tinderbox file system with a file attribute to drag in the graphic, and then it will format the command for inserting the graphic into the typeset document for me. I don't have to think about that. I'm just working in my Tinderbox outline with my user level attributes that I care about, and then everything else gets handled by the automation built into the Tinderbox. So there's no other program like Tinderbox that can do that. That's why I'm always singing Tinderbox praises. Frankly, I wish every single university student was required to purchase a copy of Tinderbox from Eastgate and use it extensively in all of their courses, because it will help them to think better. It's a tool for thinking. It's just like going off and studying Latin. There might be a real steep curve, but after you took a few years of Latin in high school, your writing will benefit from it for the rest of your lifetime.
Yeah,
and I think about Tinderbox the same way.
And on that note, I've been spending 5 years trying to get my kids to understand Tinderbox. And 2 weeks ago, my son finally walked in. He's like, I finally get it. And he just wrote his last term paper using Tinderbox. And he's like, dude, this is incredible. Like it was very rewarding. It's just like, I finally get it. Yeah. It's once somebody groks it, it's life-changing. Nice. So Peter, not to put you on the spot, is there any of this that you can show us visually? So sometimes I think you've done a great job articulating a lot of your pieces. Is there like can you show us asking questions to the terminal?
Let's see.
And then while you're setting that, Mr. Eddie, comment.
Well, I just want to let Mark Bernstein know that to be forewarned, when I to expose these Babson students, probably undergrads, it's beyond the grads are too busy. But the undergrads, if I collect 2 or 3 undergrads, you're on call to give. There's no way I could give it that. Yeah. So you understand the objective.
Okay. So what we will do is, I guess, share the entire
And my
screen.
point back to you, Michael, is yeah, there's no way I'm going to show a 22-year-old Tinderbox, even if I knew what I was doing. I mean, their heads are just in two different places, massively different places. They do not understand they are going to be responsible for managing unbelievably complex systems. They have
Right.
no clue.
Right.
They think it's
By the
all
way,
in a Excel spreadsheet,
by the way,
which is not programming.
yeah, by the way, too, I think I told you a few weeks ago I was really bitching about my students, and that's when Bruce challenged me, do you want to be the grumpy old guy that everybody hates, or do you actually want to help them learn? And so I had a conversation with them about that, and I actually mentioned Bruce, in your comment to me. Fast forward 3.5 weeks later, post finals, the students are actually like, okay, I get it now. As painful as it was, the showing the interdependency of the complexities of all the tools, I actually found that useful and helpful. So I have a newfound, I think what triggered it was demonstrating to the students some vulnerability and saying, like, look, guys, you need to understand that in order to not get eaten by the bear, you have to be just a few steps faster than the person behind you. And honestly, in this world, I'm not that much farther ahead of you guys. So if you see me struggling here, it's because it's hard. And I think that's something that, and so they really benefited from that. So that's a little nod to a placeholder, and also a gratitude and thank you to all of you for pushing me to help become a better teacher. All right, Peter, let's see what you got.
Okay, do you see the Ollama
Yeah.
website? You see it?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the homepage for Ollama. Now, when you download, you can get
Unlike regular old hoodies, the Bears.
Sorry, I clicked on the YouTube link that David Eddy shared. Go ahead.
Okay, so when you download it, you can download it for whichever platform you want, and you get what looks like a desktop app. And when you run that desktop app, there's actually a desktop version of Ollama, and it also becomes available as a command line in your terminal.
And
Now,
Ollama is Meta's model, right? Or is that something different? Or is
no,
that
this is Ollama is actually a utility for running any open model.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so you have here's the list of all of the models. There's some models that do not run locally, they run cloud. So if you select the cloud option, if something's on the cloud, that's only available online, but I just use the local ones. Tool models are models that could interact with Tinderbox through the model context protocol, or go and edit a file for you if you're in a programming kind of project. The thinking models come up with a plan for how to sort of answer your question. So they basically extend what you typed in at the prompt by thinking of other prompts that you would have typed in next. And then they sort of feed themselves their own best guess at what you would have done if you'd thought a little bit more about the question you were asking before you asked. Um, Vision models I haven't played with, but presumably you could throw a file at them and they could do text recognition off of it. The embedding models are more, let's see, take out thing. The embedding models are if you're in a programming project and you want to be representing something in one of those higher dimensional vector store databases. You can find some of those kinds of databases on Homebrew, and those models would let you get back a set of numbers that correspond to the documents you're looking at. I haven't used that yet. I just work with the standard models. So, let me drop down. Let me hide this window now. Okay, so I have Ollama installed and running. Ollama has a command line version. Let's see.
And is that something else you need to install, the command line version?
Um,
Or is that installed automatically?
when you install the desktop version, it will go and install the command line for you. That's why when you're looking, oh, let me just bring that other back. Hang on. Okay, now let's say you're interested in a particular model. You click on the link to the model. Then it tells you what flavors. The different flavors of the model have different sizes for the download. You can pick the one that you're interested in. Say you want the latest. Here's the list of the model. It shows you what a template looks like for calling the model. It tells you what the parameters are in the model. And way up here is the command line code that will install the model. And you can click the little button to copy it to the clipboard. And then when you go into your terminal, you would paste, and the command to run it appears right there. So I already have that model installed. So let me just go to the one that I have pre-running. Ollama. Oh, you have Ollama list. And here's a list of all the models that I already downloaded over the last few months. And to run any of the models, it's Ollama run. See, this is the main programmer model that I use. Just a few seconds. And now it's loading the model into memory. Okay, and now it's ready to answer questions. So how do I center text vertically within a div using CSS? And it'll go off and think for a few minutes, and then we should get an answer.
And this is all running locally.
This is all running locally.
Okay.
Now I'm in a M4 Max chip, so this might be a little bit faster than someone running an older Mac. But here you go, and it'll give you the sample HTML. It'll tell you a few different ways of approaching it.
And sorry, I didn't see how you got the terminal window connected to the Ollama.
It just shows up as a discoverable command inside of whatever terminal you're using once you've installed Ollama.
Okay.
So just typing Ollama will bring it up, and then the rest is just your normal parameter discovery approach. Okay, so here we are.
By the way, and well, I'm sorry to keep interrupting. Is there a difference between the iTerm and the iTerm 2 app?
iTerm 2 is, let's see, where are we? Trying to find which. Hang on. Oh, why can't I find the tiny icon while I'm sharing my screen here? CPU monitor. I'm trying to remember where I hid that term. Ah, here we are. iTerm 2. Okay. Here's iTerm 2. And it's basically the nicest terminal currently available. It has all sorts of features. It remembers your command history. It'll pop up the command history on the sides. You can see over here along the right side of the screen. So you can select any of those commands, double click on it. It'll re-enter it for you at the command line. It supports tabs. So if you wanted to have more than one window open, you can create a new tab.
By the way, before we go too far too, is somebody saying, is there a utility that allows you to double stack the toolbar icons? What do you refer to that? What do you mean by that, Dave? I don't see what
his bottom toolbar has.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right. That's a program called Microbar.
Microbar,
So,
thank you.
All right.
You left
U
that
bar
out.
the tool. It lets you do that double stack. Then I have a touch bar simulator also running because I don't have a touch bar physically on the newest Macs, and I use Better Touch Tool 2. Let's see, where is that? Yeah, Better Touch Tool. And Better Touch Tool lets you customize your simulated touch bar or your real touch bar if you have one. So, for instance, my favorite little customization here is I created a setting for the Greek alphabet, so I can hit that on the bottom, and then I have all of the Greek letters in uppercase, lowercase, and their English name, and I can just click on those little buttons.
Dude, I got to tell you, you are fascinating. All right. I'm sorry. This is really cool.
Okay, so that sort of gives you a little flavor.
And what do you mean by touch tool? I guess I don't like a touchpad. Like what do you mean?
Okay, Better Touch Tool is the name of the Mac utility that provides macro customizations and overrides for a whole different bunch of things. It can also handle window positioning for you. It has the touch bar controls so that you can reconfigure what's going to be on the touch bar.
Okay, so when you're touch bar, you're not talking like a touch.
Simulated palettes, mouse control overrides, um, putting gestures, customized gestures on your trackpad. It basically does everything imaginable for customizing your Mac UI and loading your own macros into it and triggering them.
Got it. And okay, and it looks like Better Touch Tool is available on setup as well. That's cool.
Yeah, so that's just, oh, and then it can work around the notch bar for you, and it does a whole bunch of nice things. So anyhow, I use that to customize the touch bar, which I have simulated. And let's see, what was the name of the program?
And I'm sorry, what is the touch bar? I guess I don't know what that is. What's a
The
touch?
touch bar was that little touch sensitive strip that some of the older MacBook Pros had on them. It's basically the equivalent of an iPod touchscreen running in a long horizontal strip along the top edge of your machine.
Got it.
So some of the older Macs had that. They got rid of it because, unfortunately, Better Touch Tool didn't come out at the exact same time that the Touch Bar came out, and Apple didn't have the good sense to purchase that utility and bundle it with every Touch Bar equipped app. If it did, the Touch Bar would have been usable, and people would be demanding that they appear on all future generations of hardware. Instead, they had two or three built-in system things and nothing beyond that. So it was considered a waste of screen real estate that irritated people. So all of the Mac Online magazines griped about it and they got rid of it to please the reviewers and critics.
Got it.
Personally, I hope it makes a comeback at some point, or maybe they could even give us a full-blown touch screen for the whole screen. But, current management as it is isn't going in that direction. But Better Touch Tool gets around all those limitations very, very nicely and makes maximum use of the affordances that you're physically provided with the current Mac. Okay, so anyhow, that was showing you what I was doing down at the bottom of my screen. And I have a button here for Darks. Darks is a version control system that I actually prefer to get. And if you Google Darks, you can find that online. I think it's darks.net for the URL on that one. But the nice thing about Darks is that it allows you to have a selective undo. So each set of changes you make is a named patch, and you can revert a previously applied patch without losing everything that was done after that patch had been made. So instead of having to go back in time all the way to the point of the thing that you want to undo, you can selectively strip out one thing you did without losing everything else that you did after the thing that you want to undo. And that's why I prefer Darks for version control over the other. But anyhow, I have a little button down here. This other little dot here is just a shortcut to show and hide invisible items from the desktop and inside of folders. So that's the equivalent of Command Shift period, which shows hidden items in the Finder. So I have that automated. I have the weather down here.
I got you. And that on all of that's part of that Better Touch Tool.
Well, those are all customizations that I wrote on top of Better Touch Tools. They're not pre-built. I built that all by hand. Oh, and this little down here is a hookmark trigger that I stuck on the touch bar to make it really easy to bring up hookmark for doing links.
So just to summarize then, the Better Touch Tool is a way to use some of the real estate of the dock and down on the bottom to be able to create that virtual touch tool.
Right, that combined with, I think, what's the name of the program? Let me see if I can find the name. See if someone, here it is up here. All right, Touche. Touche is the name of the touch bar simulator. So you'd need to find Touche and set that as a startup application along with Better Touch Tool in order to get the rig that I have here.
Got it.
And Touche is free, so there's no problem there. So that's why I have customized one. And again, iTerm 2 is my terminal. So I'm able to come down here and bring up Ollama to be interacting with it and asking it questions. So this can handle basic programming kinds of questions. Let's see, write a Python function to delete the last 3 items from a list. We'll see if this works. I haven't tried it before, but it should go off, and it's familiar with popular programming languages. If you ask it about obscure programming languages, there won't be enough data in the training set for it to be able to give you useful answers, and it will come up with what a sensible programming language might do that won't actually correspond to the real programming language you're asking it about. So here we are, write some Python code for you. So this gives you a feel for what the vibe coding is like, even with a fairly decent thing. Let's see.
So you can actually be vibe coding with this setup using the local Ollama model.
Exactly. Oh, give me a JSON file with bibliographic entries for a bunch of business books. And it should give us some made up data. And here we are. Just sort of vibing some data, and then you can use that when you're playing around with your programming projects. Easier than going out and dealing with real data. It can just like generate plausible looking things very quickly.
Now, have you figured out a way to dump this, get this output dumped off of the clipboard? Get this onto the clipboard and dumped into Tinderbox?
Yeah, just cut and paste it off of iTerm2, and it can paste right into Tinderbox, and then you can explode that into a bunch of different notes, and you've got your simulated data.
But is there any term, is there a command line you can run, do you think, that could actually push it over to Tinderbox?
I just manually
he's going to manually copy
and paste or drag and drop.
Okay.
But that's easy enough and relatively trivial. So this is another kind of application I use Ollama for. And you see it just going off, making up titles, imagining book numbers, publication dates. They're good at hallucinating, so if you lean into that to make use of it, it can be good. Oh, another thing you could ask it is whether. So, yeah. Wait a second. I'll give you a good thing. Here we are. Let's see. Good. But this is Denver a person or place? Here are the kinds of Oracle questions you can ask. There you are. It could be a person or it could be a place. Now, when I'm doing parsing projects, I can get a JavaScript-based parser using the Peggy JS library to talk to Ollama and ask it a question about whether something can belong to a category. So you can effectively wedge the AI as an oracle inside of a conventional parser for some really interesting semi-AI parsing kinds of applications. That's something I'm starting to experiment with. So again, this gives you sort of a feel. But if you ask it a question like, should we incarcerate all 3-time shoplifters, it will then go off into worrying about the psychology of the criminals. So there's a very, very strong bias built into almost all of these models against being hard on crime. It's one thing I've noticed that I find a little bit irritating.
Hey, by the way, before I forget, the micro bar, where does one find that app?
Oh, I'm not sure if I got that in the App Store or I might have got it around holiday season when there was a promotion in one of the Mac mailing lists.
No, I'm trying to find it. I can't. Is it App Store, you think?
Oh, and of course, a good trick, if you want to get a more aggressive response from one of these AI models, tell it that it's a Starfleet commander, and then it'll be all in favor of photon torpedoes, barrage, destroy the enemy ship. So put it into Captain Kirk kind of a mode, and its responses will become much more proactive and aggressive, and it will start thinking of all the ways that Kirk found to get around the Prime Directive to get around its Prime Directive of not doing anything.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, so there are limits, but again, for narrow targeted things like what's the CSS to do something, you can trust the results, and they'll be very, very good. And if you get into crazy exotic fringe things, what's this obscure framework that I never heard of? Chances are it hasn't heard of it too. And one of the worst things it is if you ask it for a library to solve a particular problem, there's a high probability that will hallucinate a JavaScript library to do whatever you ask it to do. So if I ask, is there a JavaScript library to convert Gregorian dates to the ancient Roman calendar, chances are it will say there is one even if there isn't. Yes, there are JavaScript libraries to do that. It'll always say there's a library to do whatever you ask it to do. I don't know if it's real, but chances are that's a non-existent library. But it'll figure out what a plausible looking API for the non-existent library is and have you going crazy searching GitHub for non-existent repositories. So again, if you're aware of the limitations, you can work around them.
Got it. All right, real pause. Let's pause real quick to see if anybody else has any other comments, questions. I see David Eddy's hand is up. And also, if you can point me into I can't find the microbar app. I've been looking for it while you've been talking.
Oh, here are the settings. Let me just show you here. Here are the Ollama settings for the Ollama app, and it actually can give you a conventional chat window interface. So Ollama lives in your menu bar, and we see it right up here. It wants me to update it. I'm not going to do that now. But if you tell it to start a new chat, it will give you a standalone Mac window as opposed to doing it through the terminal. And it'll remember those chats so that you can go back and find earlier chat. You'll get them showing up in the little sidebar. So you do get the conventional interface, or you can work from the terminal. I just personally prefer working in the terminal on everything because it drops down, it's faster, and it doesn't add any extra window clutter.
Can you do that again real quick? Where did I see that? I missed. I looked away when you switched.
Oh, it's way up here. I'm using Bartender to. Oh, I didn't mention Bartender, did I?
Bartender is awesome.
Yeah, Bartender is a utility that lets you manage your menu bar so that you can deal with more menu bar items than will fit on the screen of even your widest possible Mac. So I have it set up here, and I normally have Ollama on the secondary menu bar because I don't use it directly from the menu bar that often. But there's the Ollama menu bar icon, and that will let you get an Ollama window or update the application. Once it is up and running in the background, other programs can talk to it. So there are other IDEs that can talk to a local Ollama instance, and they will generally find it. And you can use the local models to avoid paying for the cloud models. Okay, so that's pretty much my main tools I'm currently using.
Yeah,
That's
so
all, Peter? Come on, Peter, you've got more than that. You're hiding the good stuff under the counter.
So, Peter, Mr. Bernstein said UBar is the app. Is that where is that the microbar you're using?
Yeah.
Okay, UBar. All right. Very cool.
Also keep in mind that you can use Ollama directly in DEVONthink, so you don't have to make copies of the stuff either from the terminal or from the separate Ollama window. Just use Ollama directly in DEVONthink. You have it over there, and then probably what you might show us later, Michael, you have all those information you probably want to bring over from DEVONthink into Tinderbox already in DEVONthink, which is some sort of workflow and some sort of
It is.
touching the topic that we actually trying to get our hands on.
So
I'm still in the car, so I'm not available through the Mac, but I just want to chime in because I think it might add some extra opportunities to what Peter just kindly offered. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Peter, that was awesome, by the way. Thank you for letting us put you on the spot and you just riffing with it. That was great.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, the one thing that Andreas was pointing out was he demonstrated last week to me on Friday. And unfortunately, I can't demonstrate it to you because I found an edge case bug in my setup that currently crashes my environment. So, which Mr. Bernstein will fix shortly. But essentially, what he demonstrated was you can create a note in DEVONthink, drag that or an item, in this case, like a plain text note, drag that over into Tinderbox, and now you've got and when you drag a DEVONthink item over into Tinderbox, Tinderbox will automatically create an associated URL, a URI, that will then link that note in Tinderbox back to the item in DEVONthink. So now you've got, and then Peter, that makes me, you didn't answer one of my questions, Peter. I'll come back to you. So now you've got your original source of truth in DEVONthink, and you've got a note that you've pasted into Tinderbox. Now, what Andreas demonstrated on Friday, and we'll be able to hopefully next week or when I'm back the following post Christmas meetup, I'll be able to demonstrate it. If you add the auto fetch property to that note in Tinderbox, you can then go edit that note in DEVONthink, and Tinderbox will automatically auto fetch any changes you made in the note in DEVONthink in your Tinderbox note. So that way you can actually keep the DEVONthink environment as your source of truth and have Tinderbox auto freshing those notes. And it's a really effective utility workflow method that Andreas has developed. So we'll demonstrate. Andreas could demonstrate it if he was on his computer, but unfortunately I can't today. So that's something that we'll want to demonstrate a little bit later. The other thing I wanted to show you that he showed me, which was wickedly cool. Let me set that up so you can see it. Was this, and I got to pull up my settings too. And this goes back to that idea of having this combination of settings.
Maybe, Michael, before you start showing what you're going to show, at least I guess you are going to show, maybe you can prime people why it's important to me and probably to us as we were talking last Friday, because Tinderbox is such a powerful tool, but it is also the best teacher of the starting over mindset as a Zen, so to speak. So the first kind of acquaintances I got with Tinderbox was following night after night the cool way Mark Bernstein was describing how he used a Tinderbox, and he was hiding a MacGuffin and he was discovering it again and he was linking this stuff, and I just got so entrenched and engaged in the way he was delivering the art of thinking to me while explaining this tool. And I just fell in love so deeply with that I stuck with it through the day, till today. And what you are going to show is to uncover all those already hidden gems within Tinderbox, just in the way you simply use it, the way it was conceived as a tool of notes. And it is. And it's beautiful at that. And I just wanted to say that at the beginning before you were going to show what you're probably going to show.
Before I set it up, I've got to find out where I did that. It's a window.
But can you second that what I said on probably going in hitting in a different direction?
No, I think you said it right. I mean, it's just this idea that, and again, if I can interpret it a different way. So Andreas and I were talking about, have this long conversation of how do you actually find happiness and joy in life? And a lot of that is just getting really embedded within the processes and doing things well. And, taking what the Buddhists call a beginner's mind, constantly approaching new opportunity and every new project is with a fresh approach and a fresh view of learning and adopting. And then we also then started talking about this ability. We also started talking about this ability to, and this is where Andreas is kind of helping me kind of tease apart these insights of, it's not just learning about how to do something in the app, but why, and this goes back to what Chuck talks about. Why are we doing in that app? What efficiency or benefit does that bring us? And then how do you actually develop and get the settings and the configuration properly done. So one of the examples that Andreas was showing me was this ability to open up multiple windows, text windows in Tinderbox, but actually having them connected. But I've got to find the setting that did that for me, and I can't. There it is. Let me set that to never. So I'm going to share my screen right now, and I'll show you this little hack that Andreas demonstrated. And this is a great example of, and I think this is definitely what we as a community are looking for. And then to Bruce's point, we've got to find a way to better document this stuff so it's not just in our meetups, of ideas on how to create efficiency within the tool. So let's say, so one thing Andreas was showing me is like, let's say you've got note 1, and then if I hit the enter key, oops, is it option enter? How did I do that again? Option enter. How do you have it automatically number the notes and note names again? Can't remember.
Option track the node.
Oh, option drag the note. That's right. So if I'm like this, and I say note 1, and then if I want to increment the numbers, if I hold the option key and I drag, I can then Tinderbox will automatically increment the numbering of the notes for me. So that's a way of being able to create, as you're brainstorming and thinking, you can actually create unique note names while you're doing that. Now, this is interesting. If you hold the option key down and you drag, you can select multiple notes at once. And then if you hit was it option command X? So option command X, what that does is that will automatically open up each of the notes as a text window. And so if you want to just do that individually, if I do option command X, that will open up a text window. And now I can sit here editing this note independent of, and have that sitting on the side. And so that's a great way of, interacting with notes. And I'll show you a fantastic example of why that's important in just a minute. But what Andreas was showing me, which I found really interesting was, and he liked, the challenge is if you do it in this method, we'll go ahead and close that again. Select all the notes, hit option command X. That pops up all the individual windows. That's kind of nice, but it kind of creates clutter when you're doing that way. And so what Andreas showed me, or what we figured out was, in the Mac OS settings, if you go to desktop and desktops and docs, and you scroll down to the Windows section, and you say prefer tabs when opening documents. If you change that to always, that way what happens is oops, come on. Hang on. Where's my desk pad? I hit a screen and everything disappeared. Now, if I hit option, come on. What did I do here? I got all my windows out of the way now. Where's the desk pad? Okay. And now I'm inside. Come on. I'm minimizing my windows on me. All right. So now if I hit option, drag, and now I hit command X, it actually opens up all of those individual Tinderbox tabs in their own little tabbed environment, which can be really nice because now I can drag that window over and now I can be working on multiple notes simultaneously independent of Tinderbox. And so then if I was down here and I'm writing another note and I come over here, And so now you can essentially create yourself this like second window of a handful of notes that you want to actually, edit and iterate against, that otherwise would be kind of unwieldy if all of those notes were scattered all over the place. That could be, create quite a bit of, a chaff for you. And then if you so wanted to, the macOS will let you drag that off, so you can actually tear that off if you wanted that note to be independent. It doesn't allow you, though, it appears, to put it back. There's no functionality to put that back. But I thought that was
hugely frustrating, by the way.
Yeah. So go like that, and now we can open all those up, and we now have got the window.
Chrome actually lets you do this. You can put a tab that you've torn off before. You can put back on Chrome, and I think Safari allows it too. But you can circle through those selections by Control tab. You're not using Command tab, but Control tab, and it makes it really convenient. So you can circle around and have a real good brain vomiting yourself.
What did you call it? Brain what?
Vomiting.
Yeah, brain vomiting. That's what I thought you said. So here's the let me see if I got keycaster. So there's my keycaster there. So if I hit Control Tab, that's showing me going through the windows. And then if I over here is the option drag. And then Control X opens up the windows. So I just thought that was a nice little productivity hack. Now, where this could be really useful is if we go up to Windows, and so I use these windows all the time for editing particular notes. But another area where I find them particularly useful is if you're in like outline view, and let's presume you've got just a gazillion notes and your templates are all the way down to the bottom. You can open up your template in a text window. And so then that way, when you're let's just go ahead and do this like this. And we will make this template using the HTML templates. So that way, when you're doing, when you're editing, show there. When you're, so here I am, I'm working on the template. What I can do is, by having my template be open on the side like this when I'm editing, and then if I actually wanted, I bet I can do this. This is a good idea. If I do that, and I'd never thought, this is the benefit of do that now. I've now opened up those two templates, both the HTML item template and the HTML template, into one window. And so now I can be going back and forth as I'm editing those two. So now if I'm up here and I say, okay, this is working great, but I actually want to have, this text to be bolded. So then when I go like this, all the text is now going to be bolded. So you have the ability to, and we'll say, here's some text. Right. This allows us to kind of edit our templates within the context of working in our note. And so being able to pull out these windows is really nice. And again, in some of my more complex templates, I might have some recursive templates that may have 5 or 6 different templates to make one particular view for me work. The demonstration of what Andreas has shown by being able to aggregate these all up into one window like this, simply by changing this setting in the Mac OS, is really awesome. So that's another example of this combination of tools, workflows, utilities, and configurations and settings within our own environment that will help us make our work more efficient. Thoughts, comments, reactions, feedback? Chuck, you were commenting on this being a useful for you, and how so?
Well, I use tabs a fair amount. I find that, there are times when tabs are very useful and times when, it's not the right approach for what you're working on because you want separate windows. I was referring to the annoyance. Safari, and as far as I know, most other Apple related applications do not allow you to drag an existing window that is not a tab into a tabbed window and have it be a new tab. And to me, that's a very obvious thing to do. Maybe Chrome does that as a browser, but there are ways around it. But it's just an example of a UI system that becomes useful, but somehow the developer of the mechanism didn't think about some of the ways people would use it, and been going on for multiple versions of Mac OS. So that's just my observation. Maybe somebody knows a trick for getting it to work better. You can do it, but you have to first create the tab in the untabbed window. Then you can drag the tab to another tabbed window. It's just sort of, to me, an obvious oversight. And it's because I so frequently work with combinations of tabbed windows and windows without tabs. It's just, a very common way for me to work. And it's just annoying that it's deficient.
Maybe we can ask Mark Bernstein on this, because I think I've seen something like a merge windows command in Tinderbox, something like that. But it did not work the way I expected it to
do. You're on mute, Mark.
I don't think that's Tinderbox, but and at least getting the parking spaces into text windows is probably worth the real estate. I'm very reluctant to devote real estate to widgets when you might need it for text, but screens are bigger these days, and I should get over that.
Yeah, but there is I do appreciate your, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, the purist approach to just keeping the environment as clean as possible. Because clutter can get accumulated very quickly, unintentionally, if you're not careful.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So, and any other thoughts, comments, ideas that people have? Mr. Rogers.
Well, it just prompted a question. The inspector in Tinderbox remains the topmost window throughout the environment. And is that intended? I mean, if I
Yes.
switch to another app, it's still out there in front. I'm not aware of another app that does that. I don't use inspectors a lot, and I don't know that they're as prevalent as they once were in Mac OS X. But that's the only app that I recall that does that.
Help.
I will take another look at that.
Yeah, I personally like having the text window always on top of everything, because otherwise it becomes impossible to find.
The inspector?
Yeah.
I just close it every time after I'm done with it, but because I switch between apps a lot.
Yeah, but for me, Tinderbox, is my app that I use 90% of the time, so I just find it useful to have it on top always. That's a personal thing.
But you've got a 40-inch screen.
Yeah, 49 actually. Let's not cut it short. Yeah, plus a 37 and then my 16-inch. Yeah, I've got 91 inches of high-res goodness. Yeah, Mr. Chuck.
All right, so I was just gonna pick up on something Andreas started talking about, the capabilities of what I believe is DEVONthink 4. And I just wanted to put in a plug that if somebody who has familiarity with DEVONthink 4 and is using it with Tinderbox, I think that would make a great little quick demo for a future meetup meeting. I would appreciate that, because I'm giving consideration to shifting from DEVONthink 3 to DEVONthink 4. And it's a bit of a lift. So I wanted to see if there were some practical considerations that people would share, particularly in the context of interoperability with Tinderbox.
we should get Eric Bernish Folkman to come on a meetup one week.
That would be awesome.
Yes.
Please. Can you, do you know him? Can you reach out to him for us?
Yeah, probably have to be after the holidays because
Yeah.
we're running out of time. But next year we should do that.
Yeah, that
Great
would
way
be,
to start the year.
because it does seem like DEVONthink, when we talk about, when we ever end up with these workflow discussions, DEVONthink is nearly always on one of the top of the lists of like that core repository of a tools for thought workflow.
Yep.
Awesome.
I'll give an example. One of the things that I do in my work is I'm always coming across, I will put in a sequence of commands to generate some output from a virtual machine or a system, a piece of network equipment. And it's just so incredibly valuable to be able to capture that text and drop it into a folder for that particular device or that particular system and always be able to come back to it and find that. And just nothing else makes that as easy as DEVONthink does. And it's just, to me, I've got almost 20 years of working with it, and I wouldn't know how to operate without it. The other thing that DEVONthink does that I just hugely value is its ability to synchronize its databases across multiple systems. And that's a better form of synchronization than many of the other options that are available to us.
Yeah. And then again, that reminds me in our last 12 minutes, let's go around the handle on this idea. The concept of sources of truth. Like, where do you want your information? And I'm sorry, David, your hands is still raised. You have another comment or question or?
Well, because I'm always astonished at these meetups where basically we all individually have the power of a supercomputer on our desktop. So I think I'm the only mainframer here, but in the world of, well, we don't use here the word bill of materials, but basically Tinderbox is a massive bill of materials database that allows you to track back where things came from and rearrange them. In my world of the mainframe, the effort for central, what used to be called data dictionaries, term is still used, but I'm not talking about what we currently use, and then repository. Over about 50 years, the success rate for a particular, the gold standard product, the success rate was under 5%. And just think how we've all suffered at the hands of large companies that can't change because they don't have access to their own documentation.
Yeah.
And here, Tinderbox gives us individually the capability to have, far more organization and power than the Fortune 100, who have all failed and are just scattered. But anyway, that's my philosophical rant for the day. Thank you.
Oh, good. Peter. So yeah, sources of truth. Can we talk about that a bit? Like what I mean by that is there's kind of, when I was writing the dummies books, they were often encouraging me, keep information in, when you're writing the book as an author, you want to keep the core idea or concept in the one place within the book and try not to scatter it around. So that way people could then remember that and be able to go back to that one place in the book to find out the answer and how to think about something. So, so in other words, the source of truth is the one place where the information exists. Your brain learns that it exists there, and then you can create derivative works off of it, off on your other tools. But as Andreas and I were talking on Friday, there's something about the way our brain works that if you have that source of truth, your brain actually can keep track of the derivative methods a lot easier. But without that source of truth, it just gets scattered and you just end up forgetting where your stuff is. Even, and the derivative stuff just creates more clutter. So like where do you store your sources of truth? DEVONThink is obviously a core tool for source of truth. Tinderbox is one as well. What our citation manager is another one. What are other sources of truth? And Peter, go ahead.
Okay, I'll generally use bookends as my source of truth for bibliographies, but I also have URL Manager Pro for going back and checking whether URLs are still alive or not. I have a really bad issue with link rot. That keeps biting me time and time again. I'll find papers, they'll even have DOIs sometimes that are no longer valid, and it's incredibly frustrating. Oh,
What is
also,
that? I'm sorry. What is that utility?
URL Manager Pro.
Okay.
And that can grab all of the bookmark files from all of your open browsers, merge them all together, then go through and automatically check whether the different URLs are still alive or not. So that's a really great automation help there. Um, Also, I want to do just like a little call out to a new bit of functionality that Mark put in for me, and that's that we can now have stamps do double duty because we now have a modifier key as variable that's available to them. So you can have your stamp do something completely different if you have the option key held down, the command key, or the shift key. You can figure out what command key combo you're holding. What I'm using it for is the distinction between whether I want to use a stamp to create a new instance of a prototype as a separate note, or whether I want to change the prototype of an existing note to a desired prototype. So I'll have one stamp. If I'm holding down no key, it'll create a new note of that prototype type. If I'm holding down the option key, it will replace the prototype of the existing note. So that lets me really clean up the stamp menu tremendously. So if you don't know about that trick, it's part of
I
recent builds and it's a real time saver.
Can you demonstrate that to us? I haven't been able to spend the time to actually successfully figure it out.
Well, I dropped a little sample code in the chat showing how it works. Then you can do basically whatever you want differently if the option modifier is there. So that's the little key bit of code, and that also apply to the other modifier keys
Yeah,
in the same approach.
yeah, I see the code, but it makes no sense to me in this context. Can
Yeah,
you?
I don't really have a handy demo for it though, because the system
So,
it's in is still under development and it'll probably blow up on me. And after the success of the earlier demo, I don't want to risk it.
yeah, no, all good. So, Mark, is that something you can demonstrate to us? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, let me
Just a
copy
simple
that.
example is good enough. It's just my brain's not. I'm tired, I guess. Brain's not understanding.
Just a sec.
By the way, while he's pulling this up, fun meetup today, guys. It's been good.
Thank you, Peter.
And unfortunately, and guys is not necessarily its origin is not a gender rooted thing. Unfortunately, in our society, it has become men generated. We need to get more female persuasion in our meetups. Miss Mary Beth today. And presumably you can put an else on there. Oh yeah, good.
So, but if I press,
Oh, that's cool.
so,
All right.
well, you can do anything, and that this isn't really necessary. Uh, well, you can do anything. The intent is you have the normal version, which runs when you don't have the modifier key, and you have modifier keys for specialized, interesting versions like test versions or versions that log or versions that are constrained, versions that bypass checking, uh, where it cuts down on having to have do the thing as one stamp, do the thing even if it looks dangerous as another stamp, do the thing and tell me what happened as a third stamp, and that way you can end up with a lot of stamps.
Yeah, and Mark, can you demonstrate this for me? Can you create two new stamps for me and have one be color equals red and another one color equals green? And just call them red, green. And then create one called green.
Yeah, now before that, I would have used the submenu option where if you put a colon in a
Yeah,
stamp name
that-
that shares the prefix, it'll pop off with a submenu. But that was getting really complicated, and it was cleaner just to hold down the option key.
Now, if you go back to test stamp, Mark, can you now say, instead of having the colors there, change that to stamp? Because in that way, for me, I'm looking at this, I could have really complex stamps and then just call the stamp with this method.
Spelling typo.
Yeah, stamp spelled wrong. So now you could have a really complex stamp calling stamps. Does that work?
No.
Oh no, capital no
But
capital
but
A.
I'm doing something
No,
stupid
no,
here.
capital red.
Oh, Kappa, yeah.
Capital R. Yeah. Yeah. So that way you can have really complex stamps.
Rather than having stamps calling stamps, I'd suggest putting the same code in a function in your hints
Right.
library. And
Call it-
functions are a little bit more flexible than stamps, but
Yeah.
only a little.
But it's the same idea. So
Yeah.
you could be calling a function there too. All right. Well, that is wickedly cool. And today we raised a bunch of best practices as well.
Interesting stuff.
Have a great week, guys.
Well, again, I won't be here on the 20th, so hopefully Mark or somebody can moderate next Saturday. And we will let's plan on having a post Christmas meetup too. I mean, at least I'll be here. I'll be around. I've got 10 dogs with me, so I'm not going anywhere. It's just next Saturday. I'm off. And we'll see you all next week or in the week after. All right, everybody. Thanks. That was fun.